I think we are. And we're live. There we are, 17 seconds into it. You know, there's always a slight delay. You always hit live and you're like, are we live? And then all of a sudden it comes up 17 seconds. Well, it's that time again. It's Wednesday. How you doing, Mr. John Wilburn, bringer of the No Name Nationals?
I'm doing, and I see lots of folks are in here already.
Well, go ahead and greet them. You got the better greeting.
Who do we have? Well, we had some that were so early that they've kind of dropped off, but they'll be back. They checked in. But right now we've got Danny Boyd and the One-Eyed Cat. Now, how do we say that? Is it Miss Catchy or Miss Katie? How would you pronounce that?
I would always say before it was just Miss Katie.
Okay, we have. We'll hear. Well, I'm sure she can tell us.
Yeah.
Boring Builds and Rick Salmon with the salmon-colored VW in there. Style points for that.
Nice.
Michael Schmidt, Lout Burns. Colleen Tebow is here. Heavens Mopar Scott. We have Slant Daily Garage. Kevin's Rust. Everybody's assembling. How are you all?
Miss Katie saying, what time is it over there? It is 11:30 a.m. on the.
Yeah, you're on the other side of the world.
Wow.
It is 7 p.m. Central Time where Professor P is, and it is 8 p.m. Eastern Time where I am.
Oh man, you know, John, I totally forgot about that. Thanks again for doing this. That means it's 8 to 10 for you over there.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I must be getting old because when I hear 10 o'clock, I'm like, oh.
Two Hacks is here. Dust Devil's here. Boring Build says, how are you, gentlemen?
Oh, we're doing great. We're doing great. I see the orange sticker. We gotta do an orange sticker update.
We're at 224 days, 3 hours, 58 minutes.
Yeah, right. So, you know, one thing that's gotten a lot of attention, believe it or not, is that little thing I made, that little alternator runner.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool.
I got to tell you. Now, here's the thing: is that when I made the video, I didn't look at the volts on that. That battery was bad, and I was trying to jumpstart it to see if I could overheat it and get it hot to see if I can get the sulfates going on it to get it going again. But that was one of my deep cycle batteries that I kept. That was one of those original ones that were like made in the USA type. That was awesome. So I was trying to see if I can overheat it to get it working. But then I put it back onto other cars, and I basically in 2 hours time I was able to charge every single battery in with that thing, because it was just putting out, and it puts out 14.75 volts.
Yeah,
when it's on a good,
unregulated.
Yeah, when it's on a good battery. When it's on a battery that's on its way out like that one. It's fine,
if anyone is afraid that someone in the comments not rush in to tell Professor P that there was no voltage regulator in that system, fear not.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was trying to get it hot. In fact, I took that battery and I put it up to my stick welder. I put 30 amps to it for about 10 minutes, and then I kicked it up to about 45 amps, and I don't think I'm going to be able to bring that one back. I think it's just dead. So, anyways, but it seems to work. But a few people on Slight Daily Garage Yahoo, they wanted me to take closer pictures for them, and like, what is it? And I was like, you know what? I might just make a video about how I did it. You know, so
I thought it was neat.
Yeah, why not? You know. And today I spent all this time making a list of things to talk about, and guess what? I left it at work. So we're going off the whim today.
Hey, you know? Freestyle can be great.
It's a freestyle one, so
because a lot of times they bring the questions.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I'm hoping for. I kind of already went through all my emails and answered those, and then realized I had this, and I was like, man. I already went through all the emails.
We've got Michael Schmidt and LP94. Colleen is here.
Oh, nice. It's good to have everyone come here. Sorry, my chat thing here is running a little slow, so it's tech question. Here we go. Actually, it did come up. Tech question. What do you guys think about the combo charger? Is that diffusilator products out there?
The sulfator, taking the sulfate off the plates in your battery.
Oh, just overheat it. That's what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Just overheat it. Sorry, like I said, my chat is going crazy here, and it's everything's looking funky here, so I apologize for that. But what I do is I just overheat it. Remember back in the, I'm not sure how some of you guys, old you guys are, but if you ever went to a Kragen or Chief Auto Parts back in the day, it would smell like rotten eggs in there. And that's because they would have a huge bank of batteries back there. And they were literally you would take the tops off, you'd fill them up with a little distilled water, just a tiny bit, and they would just overcharge those things and get them hot. And they would go on a temperature. And because you're getting them hot, they're essentially boiling the water and they're knocking off all the sulfates that are coming off there. And it works. Now, this is the very first battery in about 10 or 15 years I haven't been able to come back. And I don't think it's going to come back. So it's, as far as pouring a product in there, I've never tried that before. Have you?
I've never tried. I've always been afraid to put anything in a battery like that. I've not had a battery blow up on me yet. I don't want it to. Some of that's been luck, I'll admit.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'd like to watch, and I saw this in my suggestions, is, the PK process people, right? These guys in Pakistan that will fix absolutely anything, right?
Yep.
There's nothing that they're afraid to weld back together or whatever. They have videos doing starters, alternators, this kind of thing. They have some restoring batteries, and I would be willing to bet that in those videos, because, of course, I'm sure the EPA has absolutely no ability to see anything over there. Or have any jurisdiction over it for that matter. But I bet they're taking them apart and cleaning them manually, like with their own toothbrush or something, if I had to guess. So I'm anxious to see that. But yeah, could you get them clean? Yeah, of course you could. But we don't really want to be taking batteries apart and all that risk to our health and that would take to do it.
Yeah, I guess is a boiling and bubbles resulting in agitating and cleaning the plates. In other words, the more bubbles, the better. So just getting it hot will do that. Maybe I'll do a video on that. There's a whole bunch out there. Actually, you probably just Google it and research it, but there's a ton of videos out there for that. And the biggest thing is just making sure that the water's filled, because acid never leaves unless you spill it. Sometimes it just spills out. But if you just put a little bit of fluid in there and distilled water, put it back up.
Well, what kills the battery is when a cell shorts together. So it'll go from 12 points. It'll go from what is it, 12.5 to 10.6 or something like that? Or 12.6 to 10.5, because each cell's 2.1. So when one shorted together, you'll see that very specific 2.1 volt drop. That means a cell has corroded into itself to where it's now shorted.
Or if it does short too, sometimes when you're putting in volts, it'll actually go up those extra 2 volts. If it's shorting together when you're And so that's how you tell. So and you can also just do it by touch. If you're charging it and you're actually touching it, you feeling it get warm in one section, that usually tells you that cell's dead.
Well, it's a short, It's like it's trying to weld itself together, literally.
Yeah, and
what will fool people is that when you have one that's shorted and it's 10.6 volts, but you're running, so you're putting alternator voltage to it, it'll fool them into thinking, okay, it was just dead. Yeah. But it'll do that after it started.
Yeah, and then you're just dumping in tons of amps into it. It's literally absorbing all the amps coming from that alternator. And it's funny that little charger that I've got, how I can tell if it's working really good, if it's charging, is that if I can take it and run it from fast down to slow and let it go back down to idle, that means the battery's charged. It's not taking any more juice. So that tells me when it's full, is that I have to run it up to full throttle. And then if I run it back down, it doesn't die out, it's charged, I move on to the next battery. So yeah, it's actually been pretty cool. I accidentally put the clamps on the wrong post when jump starting. Thank God I just barely touched it. I stand fully clamping on it. Spark City. Yeah. Right? You know how many times I've done that on a Volkswagen?
I have done it before. I did it on a 69 Ford truck one time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah, the Volkswagen is underneath the seat on the passenger side in the rear seat, right? And there's a metal bar that runs right there. And it wasn't that I put it on the wrong clamp, on the wrong post. When I hooked it up, it was the clamp was actually still touching the metal rod that goes for the support. And when it clamped on, it was touching the post, but it was actually just barely bouncing up against that. So it was like massive spark, massive spark, massive spark, because it kept making it jump and come back. And oh my, I thought I was going to burn down my car. Oh yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, why is that bar there anyhow? I can't remember what that bar is for. I always didn't like the idea of the way the seat structure, the springs in the seat were right over top of it. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we've had that too, where it's broken them and then dropped down and hit on them. I actually bought one of those cheap plastic, enclosures that you could get from the auto parts store, the really cheap ones. I put in that, and after that happened, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to have that anymore.
Of course, Rick Salmon knows. The guy with Volkswagen, of course, would know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, Rick, that little bar that goes there, it's been a while since I looked at the backseat of a Volkswagen. Was that just to hold up that panel where the heater box comes through? Because if I'm not mistaken, I think that's what it was. Oh,
Miss Katie has a good question here.
Go for it.
Let's dig into it and figure it out.
Sure.
Deck height measurements, please.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what T-Meyer is, custom rotating assemblies. I'm not familiar with that.
Mm-mm.
What is so good about them? In my opinion, all compression ratios within reason will have flat top pistons up to 12.5 to 1. So how?
It depends on stroke.
Well, yeah, it depends on that. But I mean, what are you working on specifically? That might help a little bit. A Cleveland.
Yeah.
It's on a Cleveland. There we go.
Yeah, Cleveland. Okay. Now, I'm assuming this is not is this a stroker engine?
I would think all compression ratios up to 12.5 have flat top pistons. I'm trying to figure out what's all compression ratios within reason will have flat top pistons. So how?
And they're just moving the compression height usually.
Well, yeah. You talking about different displacements that wind up with flat top pistons? That's just where the pin and the piston is going to wind up being.
Yeah. So yeah, on the compression height, so like a flat top piston is obviously going to be lighter. It's better for racing, and then it's also better for flame front. I mean, there's many advantages to having a flat top. Whenever you have, like, say, a dome piston or something that's going to go into the chamber, the flame kernel is going to have to go up and over, or there's going to be things in the way, and you can have flame trouble as far as filling the chamber. Also, too, it's going to be a much heavier piston. So typically, what they'll do is they'll just keep moving or raising the compression height, so that way they can keep that flat top. But if you stroke it up so much, you can only raise the pin height so much, and then you're going to start running into dish. But assuming that you're talking about 12 to 1 compression and within reason, I'm going to assume that this is not a big stroker. This is probably more than likely a factory stroke type thing, because usually on most of those 12.5 is about all you can really get out of those 12 to 1 without actually going into the chamber on those. But that's really why is flame front, lightness of the piston, and then also just ease of making the product. If you just have to move the compression height, they only have to make a couple different pistons instead of all these different chamber volumes. Plus, once you start going into a chamber, depending on your cylinder head, they're all going to be different. So let's just say you're running for valve reliefs and how the chamber is. Say you have a closed chamber, an open chamber, and then you have a pop-up piston. That's where it actually has a dome on it. You could have a problem, an interference problem. So that's the very glancing blow on that one.
Yeah, you can also look at what they did on the Slant 6. I mean, you've got 3 different strokes, but again, you don't have that much difference in where the piston winds up in the bore. They had different length connecting rods too.
Exactly. To set up for that, yeah. So that's another thing too. If they just wanted to make one piston, maybe they had different rods. That's another way to look at it too. Yeah, exactly. See, do we go? Wow.
Bottom line is, though, is when we talk about grazing compression up, people automatically think about putting more material on top of the piston, but that's kind of the last place you want it. It's in the way your flame front. It makes the piston heavier, and so that's only if you're after the ultimate amount of compression you can get.
Yeah, and typically if you're going to stroke it, you're going to since you're going to have a bigger stroke anyways, you can still gain that compression. But with cylinder heads as good as they are, anything really over. In fact, when I built my engine, I made my custom pistons. It's 13.7 to 1. But if I know now what I know now, I wouldn't have gone much over 12, because you're really not going to gain much once you get over that 12 for what my application, my RPM, and what I'm doing for my setup. I was basically just using it as a crutch for torque. But with the cylinder heads as good as they are now, I really don't need that. Oh, yes, I agree with you. Spring is coming. Days are getting longer. Finally, yes. In fact, I played the old 3-card Monty with cars yesterday, last weekend. And the Cookie Monster is back into the garage. It's going up on stands, and we're going to be running our first race, I think, in exactly 2 months is our first race. So, yeah, I'm going to take it down the track, and I'm actually going to get some track time at Holly Springs before then. We're going to, since we basically sponsored the track, I can get out there and get going and just make a few non-nitrous hits just to see where it lies, and that will tell me exactly what we got. I expect it. Whenever you go from a 3-speed to a 2-speed glide, you're losing that first gear. And in my application, that car was you kind of think of it like Dallas's car. My car was literally, me and Dallas were like this. And we're going down the track. Now he put a tunnel ram on it. He went a 12. When did he win a 612, right? I think 612. I'm expecting.
I don't know if he got in the 6.0s. It's Sykeston, but he's close.
Yeah,
He's really close.
Yeah, he was in the 16s, like 612 or something like that. And then I was in the 620s, 16s. Was the best I ever got down there. So I'm expecting a 630 out of it with the glide without the nitrous. Oh, look at this! Thanks. We're going to. There we go.
There you go, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. It's always appreciated.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Now, Andy asked if he could mention something, but I will mention it. Mr. Andy needed a little help with some fuel pump stuff, so I was able to help out Mr. Andy at Unity Motorsports. So I was really happy about that. So 2 thumbs up. Thanks, man. I think it's awesome. So, and we'll leave it at that. So yeah, there was a bunch of broken down stuff that I had, and basically sent it to him. So hopefully get that thing running again. Let's see, 64 degrees, right? I saw 64 degrees, man, and Dune buggy's nice. Out. Yeah, I gotta tell you, I've been driving the Dart, and I actually had the window down with the heater on, which is like the California staple right there. And the heater on the feet. That's just, I love that in the morning going to work. That just makes my day.
Statistically, this is the coldest week of the year right now.
Really?
It is. So the fact that it's a little warmer than normal means that it's going to ascend from here instead of go down. Now, obviously, the individual weather week to week can vary, and this is warmer than normal, and this won't even be the coldest week of the year. But on the calendar, it is. So that's a good sign.
That's a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jane, that might be a $5,000
Never know.
Never know. It's going to be our little secret, right? In completely separate news, I'll just touch on it really quick. California had some wild weather yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, there's videos of a full-blown tornado going through like Spring Valley. And I know you guys aren't familiar with that area, but that's kind of where I live. Spring Valley, the trajectory goes right into El Cajon, and Bostonia is where I used to live. And that was dead center of where the little spinning wheel, the little tornado went right through. So it didn't really do much damage. It was spinning, but since it's really hilly in that area, it was just kind of going up and going down. But yeah, so it was an interesting one for sure.
You don't see the tornadoes here in the mountains, but we see them on the news everywhere else.
Yeah. And that's, I lived in San Diego all my life until I moved here. There was a very short stint when I went to Georgia, but in that whole time, I think we had 4 the whole time I was there, and they were very small, but we had a lot of water spouts. There was many times where I was off waiting for a wave or whatnot, and you would see them way out in the distance. And they're not like a dust devil that's with water. It's like a full blown, like that's a big suction of water going up. So
Michael Schmidt's in Burbank, Glendale area.
Oh, really?
I didn't realize that.
I didn't know that either.
You ever see Leno out on the road?
I've been to Leno's place over there by the airport.
Neat.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool spot, dude. It's a big facility.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's multiple buildings.
Yes. At that time, it was just the one. Well, it was actually the big one and the one behind it, and then that little side yard. But I think you got all those buildings right there in that area.
That's cool.
Yeah. When I was there, the massive steam engine that's halfway into the ground wasn't running yet. They were still doing the pit, so that was quite a while ago. Yeah. He's in Glendale, Burbank area.
Say hi to Mohawk and Indirect Connection. Stuck their head in here. Jed just stopped by. Thanks for swinging by. Wrong English. I see is in the chat.
Nice. It's good to see all everyone coming here. Around town. Oh, yes. Leno's literally driving a vintage car around town every time. It's great. Here's the thing is that if you ever watch Jay Leno's, he will go up into like the Cascade Mountains area, like off of 14. And Michael Schmidt knows exactly what I'm talking about. So where Burbank's located, you can kind of get over, and there's a lot of different little hills in that area where you can get into. And if you just go dead north, you can jump into some of those and then go up to like Castaic Lake and then come back down on the 14. And it's like the best mountain driving ever right through there. And that's where you see all his little videos of him screaming on these 2-lane roads. He's up in that area. Yeah. I've been all through that stuff on my motorcycles. Oh, Andy, you want to take this?
Yeah. Andy says she cut me off. Mopar, how's it going?
Oh, what's going on now?
Jed's doing Domino's tonight.
Domino's Pizza.
Yeah. There's an old Dominick's Pizza ad. That's how old it is. Before it was Domino's, it was Dominick's. And they showed a delivery driving. I don't remember what year, but it was an old VW Beetle delivery car. I thought that was so cool. That ad. Yeah. I don't even know if the picture was color, but it was old.
Dude, I delivered pizza in a '67 Volkswagen Bug for a while.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
The customers gotta like it because you can hear it coming.
Oh yeah, and in fact, well, it was my own personal Bug, and I had a full blown stinger on the back of it, and they had it was a California look. It was black and almond '67, and it had that stinger with the 135s up front, 165s in the rear. So yeah, and I had the little.
It had the stinger on it too.
Yeah, full blown stinger, baffle out of it. So yeah, it was, they knew I was coming.
Oh yeah.
They probably heard me leave the restaurant. So I did that for Little Caesars, and I did that for Domino's. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, and Pizza Hut. I did it for Pizza Hut too. But then Pizza Hut went too. You drove their vehicles, and I was like, nah.
So Jed says his dad's first car was a 65. 65 was the first year of the bigger glass in the cars. Mm-hmm. And you can't go wrong with them. There was no bad year of Beetle. They're all great. But I like the thicker posts on the older ones. No question you have a little bit better visibility on 65. And 65 has a lot more functional improvements too. But I like all those little nuances and all those little tiny changes year to year they did. They didn't change anything unless they thought it would make the car better. Imagine that. I wish we still did it that way. Right.
Yeah. Hey, have you noticed too, there was a meme that someone put out that says design is dead, and it shows all the crossovers. They all look this. It doesn't matter. There's 20 different manufacturers and they all look the same. And it's just like, wow, you're right.
Michael Schmidt's asking a question, and Professor P will know a lot more about this than me. The only time I've ever worked with emission checking is I had to learn to use a 5-gas analyzer in trade school. Mm-hmm. And so I've never had to take a vehicle through emissions where I've been registered ever.
Mine did in when my 67 Bug. The smog at that time was 65, and so I had to have it smogged. And so I couldn't really do much to the engine then. I had a 1776 in there at the time, and I think I had an Engel 100 cam in it at that point. And then I had a 32 pick, I think is what I had on the carb, and I had dual quiet packs on it, and it wouldn't pass smog because they had to put in one. They had to put a sniffer in it, so then I had to go back and put a single quiet pack on it so they could put it in there. But it would pass smog, and I had a 0019, no, I had an 019 distributor because I had the vacuum advance. But yeah, I had to get it smogged, and then they raised it to 72, and that's when I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
I can actually do what I want to do. So.
Does California have the rolling exemption on the emissions? I thought they had rolling exemption for 30 years and older or something like that.
It was, but then it kept getting kicked back. So like it stopped at say 65 forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to 72, and then they were going to do the rolling exemptions like 30 years and back. But here's the thing: is that they went to wherever the catalytic converters and all the real emissions started, which was like 75, 74.
Okay.
So I believe it's 75 is the cutoff now, and I think that's where it is. So anything 74 and older, I really doesn't have to be smogged. Because on my car, my 67 Dart, on my 66 Dart, it had to be smogged. And all it had to have was a PCV valve. My car came with headers from the factory. It just had to have a PCV valve, and that was it. Because mine didn't have a vacuum advance on it, mechanical. So it just had to have a PCV valve on it. That's how it passed smog. It was a visual inspection. So there was no point in it. So they got rid of it.
Copa's in here asking about pizza. No, it is not Aurelio's pizza, but it is it is something that you would have in areas that don't have Aurelio's.
Yeah. You know, my kids, speaking of this, I'll be the last little thing I'll talk about this, but I want them to experience a real Pizza Hut night where you go inside, you get the red glass, you get to play your little Miss Pac-Man at the little table, or your Galaga or whatever it is. You get your pizza. It's an event. It's a whole event, you know. They just closed up. In fact, the last one, the very last No Name Nationals, the very first one, when I brought the kids on the way home, I found one in Dyersburg. I called them up and asked them, do you guys have in-house dining? They're like, yes. By the time we got there, they had just shut it off about a week before we got there. We got up and they had it all closed off. I was so bummed out because I was looking forward to that on that day. We drove all back roads. We went up and over the bridge. We were going to go down to Atoka, do some entry golfing, or we're stopping at Pizza Hut Pizza. And man, it's
well. Andy's saying they have a Pizza Hut where you still dine in Belmont, North Carolina.
Okay.
And there is one in Franklin County, Virginia. It's like that still. There's a few of those old holdout Pizza Huts around, but not many. Hillsville, Virginia, I believe, still has one like
that. Shane, how can I figure out the deck height of a block? I don't know how much it was cut. I want to get pistons to come on that way on top. Okay, really, the only really way to do it at this point is if you have the old stuff. So you know what the stroke is, you know what the rod length is, and then you know what the piston is. So then you can measure piston height on the piston, and then you can measure the piston down from the deck, and that will tell you the deck height. Other than that, it's going to take a real long, lot of like tools that are very expensive, and you're only going to come close. But that's really the best way to do it. Is just use your old stuff. You already know what the compressionized the piston is, and then just measure it down. You might have to just mock it back up. Do you have any other better way to do that, John? Or
I think it might be really hard to get it centered, but I mean, if you did it with two machinist straight edges, I would think that you could get a pretty good measure. But that would take more doing. The hardest part of that would be trying to get, centered down your mains, the bore on your mains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you would use that, do it with the bearings in. It would be hard to do, or bearings out, figure the center, measure across it, split the difference. I mean, you could do it. It would take a lot of math, and the hardest part I would think would be indexing the machinist straight edge straight in the main saddle. But
yeah.
Again, for a real competent machinist, oh no, that's easy. But I don't know how to do it. But
it is easy if you have the right tools and to have that actual depth gauge, or or a set of calipers that can do that. It's rather expensive. Just do a mock-up on them. So check this out. Mr. Michael Schmidt, I had just installed a 1776 with an Engel 110 cam. That's a big cam for
It is.
1776. 70 millimeter Delardos and a 66 fastback. They sent me home with a fail, so I had to put stock carbs in 1776 with a distributor vacuum advance to pass only and take it off again. Yeah, I've been there, but that even with the Engel 110, they allowed you to pass because man, I had the Engel 100, and I had to put a 32 pick on it, and I barely squeaked by. So.
VWs are really forgiving in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Probably more than most, but
yeah.
If you're used to the V8 and you're used to 90 degrees and 8 cylinders and all that stuff, you could go and look at one of those flat fours like that that's air cooled and say, how does this even run? It's kind of amazing they even work at all when you think about it.
Yeah, I think I said this a while back, but I was very lucky to have Potter machine, racing in Chula Vista, which was literally down the street from my great grandma's house. And so I learned a lot in the Volkswagen world by having Potter machine right down the street. So yeah, I got very lucky with that. Oh yeah. Oh, 8675309.
It's 8675 Cope ceiling fan 09.
That's got to be an inside joke, right?
Cope, have you put the 2 missing blades back on your ceiling fan? He has a ceiling fan with 3 blades, but it's not one of those, 3-bladed fans, 120 degrees apart. He's got 2 missing for some unexplained reason. But
and does it do this number, or does it balance out?
No, it doesn't balance out. It looks like a Pontiac emblem that's shrunk in the dryer or something.
Oh, my 67 thankfully is free of smog checks. I do remember getting in the 1980s air pump was required, and PCV, and also a tailpipe emissions. Yeah, see, I don't remember having mine. My 67, I don't remember having an air pump on it. No, mine was a Federal bug, so I don't remember having any of that in that.
Right.
So, all right, see what we got. Hi guys, Shane, do you have an experience with the Ritter block Cometic gaskets don't line up with the water jackets? We're thinking of using copperhead and O-rings. What do you think? Okay.
That's exotic.
Yeah, I remember when these Ritter blocks first came out, and I am not the expert on this because this is what really I was waiting for them to get, I would use a little better, so that way I could get one. This is the reason why I went to Gen 3 Hemis, because I couldn't find a reliable block.
Yep.
On this one, I'm going to tell you right now, I hate to give you any advice on this because I'm jaded, because I saw how many people would buy these, were waiting in line to get them. They still have to spend $5,000 in machining to get them to work. So I don't know much on this one because I never messed with them.
I've only seen the ads for them. I know what you're talking about, but
mm-hmm.
The problem you're running into right there would scare me away, even if I did want to spend the money. It's like a chain set, spend all that to make it work.
Yeah. And, then they basically had the 2 flavors. You had the 59 or the 40. No, I think they're only came. Well, once again, I don't know anything about them anymore because I was following them for a long time. So fortunately, I don't know much.
No, I'm with you on that.
Mm-hmm. The 4s and the 8s are harder to work on than the 6s, so I settled with the 6.
Okay.
Okay.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah. Awesome. See, moving on down. See if we got anything. I think just updated. Emissions in PA is testing the vent on the gas cap. That's it. Yeah.
There you go. So when I fuel up, usually I'll leave it running. Mm-hmm. It's automatic. There's a shifter lock on it, so my dog can't knock it out of park. And I take the cap off. And every time I do, I think there's someone somewhere who would see that and stress endlessly that I'm going to turn the check engine light on. and I'm like, the joke's on you. The check engine light has been on the CRV for 200,000 miles since 2016. That check engine light has been on continuously, and I still get 28.9 miles to the gallon and could not possibly care less.
Yeah. Jimmy, I'm just going to give you a little spiel on why I'm going to go the Gen 3 Hemi route. And just for the simple reason that for a 6.4 for a BGE, which you get out of, like, say, Hellcat or whatever, or Demon, or even out of the 3/4 ton truck, 6.4, it says BGE right on it. It's the same block they put in on the Elephants, the Hellcats, everything that makes big power. It's the exact same block. You can get that in the Apache heads and a crank. That's really what you're using out of that system for about $3,400. So where else are you going to get literally heads that flow almost 400 CFM, a block that can handle 1,700 horsepower, a crankshaft that can handle 1,300 horsepower, and an oiling system that is very decent for the RPM level. Now you got to do some tricks if you're going to go higher, but it's a very decent setup for that kind of money. You're just not, because you're going to buy a block for that, like a Ritter block or an old R3 block or whatever, and have to spend a shit ton of money to get it work. And then you're going to be spending a ton of money on heads just to get the flow, the correct velocity type of flow that you could get out of a Gen 3 Hemi. That's it. So it's not for everyone. A lot of the modern stuff people don't like. I understand that. I love my LAs. I bleed small block Mopar. I love 904s. I love everything about them. But today's day and age, if you want to get over that 1,000 horsepower mark pretty easily and cheaply, Gen 3 Hemi. Basically, Gen 3 Hemi is the new is essentially to the LS guys what it is. Gen 3 Hemis is the Mopar guys. So.
Andy's asking if we've seen the Gen 3 Hemi Dungar that says in a front engine dragster and it's on nitro. No, yes. But I really want to.
He made a video of it starting up on nitro.
Oh, that's freaking cool. Is it in his museum, Andy?
Yes, it is.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, and I think it's on his channel. I think he started it up on his channel.
Oh yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty. If you get it, put it up there, and we'll watch it. I'll link it in. Oh, see, to get all the snow this weekend. But I gotta tell you, man, I started up that Dart again, and man, does that thing thumps.
It does.
Yeah, I forgot how much that thing thumps, and I was like, man.
So Rick is here flexing on us. He says, I gripe when my garage is only 68 degrees. I needed to do some welding like earlier this week, and I literally walked right into the garage, and it was about 35, right? And I walk outside, got the sun to my back. I'm like, this isn't too bad. And I walk in the garage where it's all shaded, and I'm like, nope. That's right. Just couldn't function. I don't do that well with the cold.
That's so funny. I've been there. It's even out here. I've been there. I've gone out, like I'm walking through snow to get to the garage door. I get in there and I'm like, man, I forgot to turn the heater on. And I go and look up the temperature. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go back inside.
Dust Devil Garage has a great open-ended question that is right up Professor P's alley.
Can you make cheap power with a 5.7? Yes. Define how much. But if you're looking for a 600 to 700 horse out of a 5.7, yeah. Here's the Achilles heel on a Hemi, and I'll be frank and honest with them. It's the pistons and rods. You have to open up the gap. The pistons are not the greatest, and the rods are that powder steel. So if you get decent pistons and rods, I think for like $1,500 you can get a good rod and piston in that 5.7. Now the Achilles heel on the 5.7 is it's crankshaft. It's a cast iron crankshaft. It is not a steel crank. That's why a lot of people would get the 6.1 crank, which is the exact same stroke as the 5.7, put it in there, and that's what I have in my car. Is a 6.1 crank is a steel crank in my in the 68. But a lot of people take that 5.7 and they with a turbo, because the turbo is soft, easy power. Just don't run them on the two-step. They're making 700-800 horsepower on them pretty easily. In fact, very easily, to the point where it's literally camshaft and a small like little turbo. So yes, you can. And we've done it where we've just taken the stock pistons and rods out, opened up the gap, put it on there, and we put it on 8 pounds, and I think we made 700 horse on a 5.7. So with literally everything stock except for the camshaft.
Dizzy is saying that his 5.7 makes 395 from the factory with a lot more possible. Yeah, those things are very impressive right from the factory.
Yes, agreed. And there's a big difference between the 5.7 non-early and then the 5.7 Eagle head. There's a massive difference because of the quality of airflow going through the head.
Miss Katie's asking someone, I think it's another commenter, about a machine shop recommendation. I guess it depends where you are. I mean, if you're on the other side of the way, if it's 11:30 where you are, 11:30 a.m., I don't know that we know a machine shop where you are.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know.
Yeah, the Frostbite Ram has been 10.0. He's about to get into 9s with a stock bottom end, but he's running about 20, maybe even 21-2 pounds of boost into a stock bottom end of a Hemi.
Wow, that's stock. Yeah. Like that's stock piston, stock rods, stock everything.
To my knowledge, yes.
See, to me, that yes, you can do it. How long is that going to last?
Literally, all right, but it's glorious.
Yeah, it's glorious. For these guys here, when I answer these questions, like for Dust Devil, that's a safety number. You know what I mean? Like 600 to 700, I would be totally fine driving that and running pump gas and taking that anywhere I wanted to go. Going that.
Jimmy's in Australia, so that works.
What's that?
Yeah, Val 360 Jimmy is in Australia. That's apparently where Miss Katie is, so that works. Jimmy will know. That'll be perfect.
Oh, okay. Good,
I wasn't sure where he was.
Oh, okay. Till it got the Hemi tick. Yeah, that's just lifters. That's really the biggest issue, is just oiling to the lifters on the top band of it.
Michael Schmidt, though, asks a good question that dovetails in with what you're saying.
Sure, go for it.
He's asking about the Chrysler 300s. They run the same thing. He stayed away from modern Chryslers due to the poor quality Jeep experience. Well, I'll tell you what, as far as the modern thing, I'm not the right one to ask. I don't plan personally to ever buy another vehicle the year begins with a 2. So I'm just not the one to ask about such things. Not saying they're wrong. There's lots of cool ones. I'm just not the one to ask.
Yeah. I get more thumbs and smiles per mile in my 69 Dart than anything else. And I'll give up some creature comforts. I'll be a little hot during the summertime, but my drive is only 10 miles. So big deal. I'm a little hot on the way home.
There is a peace of mind that comes with having less and less superfluous junk in your machine, to me. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't like things that I know are destined to go bad before I'm done driving a vehicle.
Exactly.
So I just don't like all that stuff. And everybody's different, right? Some people are like, I can't wait until I can trade vehicles to get heated seats and a bigger screen in the dash. And to me, that's just not even part of my world.
Do you know that's what the Journey that we just bought, the main selling point is the review said archaic, 4-cylinder engine, archaic transmission, no heads-up display. I was like, that's exactly why I want it. There was nothing that was
perfect.
It's perfect. It has a little tiny screen about this big, and it just tells you radio station, the seat, and other than that, it's right out of the 1990s. It's perfect for me.
You know what? I was watching this guy back up some kind of pickup. It was earlier this week, and you could tell that this guy has gotten, and he's an older guy too, but he'd gotten completely used to the backup sensors. You could tell. I had my window down. I could even hear him in the truck. And I'm watching him just roll back, beep, 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 and then smack that brake pedal right before he collides the car behind him. Wasn't looking at his mirror or anything. These guys going completely off the sensors. But I'm looking, and the trailer hitch is like all but taking the license plate off of this car behind him. Wow. And I'm like, I know that he doesn't even think about the fact that doesn't know the sensors don't know that's there.
Yeah.
Right?
Just knows the bumper. Yeah.
See, occasionally he tags something pretty good like that. And I just never want to get dependent upon that stuff. I don't like it. It's not ABS. I don't like ABS either. I don't like that thing pulsing under my foot and all of that. It's just something to go bad. And it's just everybody's different. So if you like that stuff, go for it.
Putting a car into a slide has actually saved my tail many times, on purpose. I put it into a slide to get it out of the way of something, So, all right, Heavens Mopars, what do we got here? I'll be trading my 78 D100 half-ton step side for 318 4-speed. My friend says I should put a modern Hemi in it. How hard is it with the wiring? I think a 4-speed will fit. It really comes down to what you want to do. I mean, if that's what you're wanting to do, I say go for it. But as far as the wiring, run the factory wiring, run with those MSD Digital 6 and put a carburetor on the damn thing.
Yeah.
It'll run just fine. Or there's many different companies. I believe Edelbrock has got the ProFlow. We got a ProFlow 4 system for it that works really well. And there's Holley. So there's many different companies to put it in there. And it's really not that bad. And the power that you get out of the modern Hemi is really like a hopped up type of Magnum engine. So those little recipes I put out that put 450, that's literally one of these Gen 3 Hemis with a tiny cam in it, and it still gets 20 something miles a gallon. So
you know the transmission tunnels in those trucks are generous.
Yeah.
I did not realize the Fords were not until I saw Andy. I said, Andy, you mean you're having to like change a tunnel to do a C6 size transmission? Oh yeah. I'm like, wow. But yeah, the tunnels are generous. And I was thinking he didn't say what 4-speed. I'm assuming he means like 833 style or something, but, or could mean, or do you mean, what was that? Was it the T18? What was that big one that came in the trucks? They all fit though.
Yeah. Yeah, you do a 318. You can even do a modern Hemi with an A500 trying in it, and
that'd be
awesome.
a hot ticket.
That'd be the hot ticket.
Or 5.8. Yeah.
And that way you have that low ratio first gear to get that thing out of the way. Oh, that'd just be.
And if you're asking how hard is the wiring, well, you know, if you one call to our friend John Cope, you don't have any wiring on the transmission part of it.
Right.
You can get rid of all of that. MP435. Yeah, Bigfoot Mark. That's it. That's what it is. That's what I was thinking. The new process 435.
Oh, yeah.
The one where you got to have really long arms like I do just to get it in first gear.
Right. It's like the cartoon, you know, you've seen those guys, you know, with doing the burnouts.
Right. Yeah, I can see, you know, I'm 5'9", but I can sit all the way back in the seat and I can put those things in first without even leaning forward because I got these like wallpaper hanging arms. They never bothered me. Some people hate that long throw first gear like that.
Yeah. 72 drive. 72 drive trucks had a different tunnel than the 4-wheel drives. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. I only in the 70s, the only thing I ever had that was trucks was the Ram Chargers. So that's kind of like whatever, like, and they were all 4-wheel drive.
I guess it's a transfer case, but it's still a good sized tunnel.
Yeah. Plenty of good machine shops. Where can I find? Okay. Where can I find dimensions and weight of a modern Hemi? Is it much wider and bigger than a 360? The biggest difference on those is where the exhaust comes out at. On a 360, where they sit, 360 is about like this, right? And then the exhaust comes out. Where on the Hemi, it's literally at this angle and it's coming down like that. So typically, it's going to run into some steering rod issues that are coming through. Even I have a key member that's designed on my 68 that's designed for it. And I still had to, and the TTI headers were designed for that also. I still had to dimple things to get the steering rod through there. And I have about this much room for it, you know, going through there. In fact, to take the headers in and out, you got to move the shaft in and out. So
it's got to be better than the second generation Hemi in the A-body.
Oh, yes.
Crush half the tube in and grind part of the steering box away, and it still rubs.
It still rubs. Still, when you're idling, everything's rattling because it's hitting things. Yeah. But as far as getting it in there, it's as far as the weight, it's rather light because they took a lot of the metal out of it because they were actually able to make that thing in CAD. So it's stronger. I don't want to use the word lighter because it's got the skirts on it. I don't know that or not, but it's a rather light engine for the power and the modern type thing. But I don't have numbers off the top of my head. You know what? I'll look that up, but it's negligible. I think it's the same as the 360. It's so close.
38 is asking what upgrades recommended for using an 8.8, I guess a Ford axle and a 400 horsepower street car. That should live all day long. I know that Dart Freak 75 here on YouTube, he's done that swap.
Yeah.
I mean, they work.
Yeah, a lot of people have done them where they just take the 8.8s and they just use, I think it's the right hand side axle, and they put them in,
Is
and they
Dallas's
just,
car an 8.8?
yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
hmm
Yeah, that's a
and
lot
it's,
more than 400 horsepower. It's in a lightweight car though.
yeah, but he's hammering on it. People love that thing.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Um, to Dan, put a 6.4 in a Duster. Tight, yes, it is tight, and it's really comes down to the exhaust. And if you have the torsion bars in there, it's even tighter. Um, let's see here. Can I get some selection ideas on 10.5 to 1, 3 to 3 smaller shutter, the 184 valve that's going into a 55? Um, yes, that's very limited information. I would need to know um, like what kind of transmission, what kind of driving you're going to do. I'm assuming 10.5 is going to be kind of spirited driving. It's going to be kind of a hot rod. Um, I would be just off the top of my head, knowing nothing else about the car as far as what you're intending to do, a decent hot setup for that would be something in the 225 because it's a smaller cubic inch. I wouldn't go any farther than 230 duration at 50 on the intake. So 225 to 230, and that's as big as I would want to go on that. Knowing nothing else about the exhaust, it would be hard for me to split it, but usually Chevrolets like about 4 to 5 to 6 degree split. So whatever you decide to do, if you go 230, I would go 236, but that would be a very large cam for a 283. But if you have, like, say, a 225, I'd go 231. I would put it on a 110 because you're going to be driving the street. So because it is a small cubic inch, so it's going to have that overlap triangle is going to be rather large. So it's going to sound good. But that would be very, very awesome, type of engine, make power from, 2,500 all the way up to 6,500. Be a really easy thing.
Buick Smith has a great question.
Go for it.
I love this. This reminds me of the gear jammer cars.
Okay.
The manual 4-speed, like the Ozark Super Shifters and classic gear jammers and all them. Mm-hmm. He says, can you discuss the benefits of a light versus heavy flywheel for drag racing?
Okay.
Lower 60-foot, faster acceleration or whatnot, pondering rotating inertia this week. Professor P can speak to the engineering of it. What I can say is a lot of these cars that run the small cubic inch engines and run at 8,000-9,000 RPM, manually shifted cars that run, say, about a 6 flat in the 8th, like good old Charlie Brown and them, they usually run a heavy flywheel. Mm-hmm. So they can store a whole lot of energy on that starting line. But it's interesting because you'll hear them like when they dry hop and stuff, the RPM comes down really slow because of all that rotating mass having to come down. And it's you can tell when they have that heavy flywheel. But from the engineering side of it, what are your thoughts, Professor P?
Okay, so I agree with you 100%. If you're a small cubic inch and it's drag racing and it's just a quarter mile, and I prefer to have a heavier flywheel because it is a stored energy thing because you're dealing with a very small RPM range. Where I like, and I understand this says drag racing, but I will tell you where a light one comes in. It's in the road racing.
Yeah.
Because you're accelerating, deaccelerating.
Yes.
And that's where you really want to have it. Now, a light flywheel on the street is a pain in the butt because it's starting off as the hardest thing because there's less stored energy. Now you're going to accelerate faster. Yes, you will when the clutch is all the way out, but getting going is going to be hard. And that's what leads you into the rotating inertia. And it is weak. It is absolutely weak. But if you're literally flat footing it, dumping the clutch, going and rowing through the gears, and you have time to come up on it, then I would say a heavier, not the super heaviest, but a heavier flywheel would benefit you. Here's where a light flywheel in drag racing works better, is if you cannot have a two-step and you have to basically hold it on the line, and like some of the South Sega, that some of those guys run a very light flywheel for this reason, because they're not allowed rev limiters. They're not allowed any of that stuff. So they can only bring it up to a certain RPM, and then they have to flat foot it. They want that thing to get up there, but they're using gears to where the gears are like, I think they're running like 5 something in the rear, or is it 6 something? Because they're really going through, they're at the top of 4th gear in an 8th mile. So, and they're really tight ratios. So it really comes down to gear selection. There's many different factors on it. On the engineering aspect of it, I would, heavy flywheel is stored energy. I always love stored energy. On my 68 Dart, I didn't go with the lightest one. I went with literally mid to heavy flywheel for this exact reason, because I want the stored energy.
Well, see, I've heard people refer to really short track, circle track, as maybe two drag strips connected by, like at Martinsville, for example, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
However, they're not getting to bring their RPM up and launch to do that 1,000 times per race. So for them, it's a different application than the person who, comes to the tree in stages and gets to take all the time in the world before the pass.
Yeah.
And this Katie asks, what's a heavy flywheel? Some of those guys around with my friend Robert were running 50-pound flywheels.
Yeah.
I mean, they could get pretty extreme, but I read a good article. Of course, if I knew I'd be talking about this, I'd have brought it up. But it was on how hard a truck pulling engine is. Rare Morrison's doing a lot of development for the truck pullers, and they talk about all the stresses on the crank and on that flywheel area on the crankshaft, and it's really interesting. So there definitely is a point of diminishing returns of flywheel, and heavy flywheel is not a cheat code for drag racing. That's the reason why you don't hear a lot of people talking about it. But for certain applications, it can give a benefit.
Yeah, and also too, it's not just the flywheel you got to take into consideration too. It's really the clutch. Are you running how many clutches are you running on? How much does that weigh?
Yeah.
Is it an 8-inch clutch? Multiple, plates? Is it a 10-inch, 11-inch? The farther you get out, the more weight, matters at that point. So there's a lot of different things.
Well, yeah, like the weight of the flywheel kind of goes hand in hand with when people think about the pounds it takes to push the pressure plate, right?
Yes.
That number has come down and down and down over the years because of the advancements that we have in friction and hydraulic clutches and all this, right? So, flywheel weight is kind of one of these things that you always have to take in context.
Yes, exactly. There's it's not just a black and white issue. It's really about setup and what are you doing. Shane, does an aluminum flywheel make more sense in eighth or quarter mile, or heavy is best? I really wouldn't do an aluminum flywheel. Now, once again, I'm only going by my personal experiences and what I would do. If I'm doing an aluminum flywheel, it'd be in a road racing or circle track type of racing application. Personally, that's just my opinion. I would definitely want to have something a little heavier for an eighth or a quarter mile.
That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Schmidt asks a good follow-up here. He says, 50-pound flywheel seems heavy. Wouldn't that make it hard to shift a synchro manual transmission? Well, we were taking out, we were modifying the gears to be able to slick shift them.
And also too, that's gonna store the energy. So when you let off the throttle, it's not going to drop nearly as far to where you have to feather it. So there's less. You basically just let off the throttle, and then as you pull on it, it usually will slip right in, because as the RPMs come down slowly, it allows it to sync up a little better. I have noticed that in my Volkswagen. I used to drag race, and I went with a very light flywheel. I had I think it was a 10-pound flywheel on this thing at one point, and that's when I realized, this is not what I want to do. It would RPM up and come back so fast that even if I was full throttle and I was just blipping the throttle to come back in, it would be below the RPM range for the next gear selection. It would drop that fast. And that's when I started learning about, I started increasing flywheel weight until I didn't have to do that. I could literally just blip the throttle and sidestep the clutch, and then it would go right in. Oh, speaking of which, do you know what I got? So I got something. I got a T5 transmission in trade for some parts. And that is going to go into Plan Z. Stick shift Plan Z. So
that'll be interesting. So Plan Z was a manual transmission before.
It's still in there.
We'll see what it can do again. Dizzy said, got to go visit your parents. He lost his father on Monday. So sorry to hear about that, Dizzy.
Oh, that sucks, buddy. That sucks. Yeah, the Plan Z still got the pedal assembly in it. It's just wired down.
Yeah. I figured it was still there.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. But I think what I'm going to do is, right off the bat, is I'm going to take my really bitchin' 904, put it into a slant 6 transmission, and just see what that does.
Yeah.
And run it the way it is. Why not? I've got an engine. I'll beat on it until I can see what I can get. I'm not sure what he ran, but if I can get into the 8s in it, that would be awesome.
you got a very modular platform to work with there. You got all the room in the world. You got nothing there you don't need. You can run any engine, transmission, or whatever you want to. Well, one thing is you might have a hard time finding a hole to run a wire through or something.
Right. I think it's always going to stay slant six. And I did find an 8 1/4 rear end, just because I want to,
Cool.
I want to be able to experiment with some
Yeah.
gears. And but I'm going to leave it the way it is right now, and I'm going to run it just the way it is. Except for some of the safety issues, I'm definitely going to put a cage in it, just because I'm just going to put a cage in it. But they're cheap. It's light. It's 150 pounds of safety, though, which I have no problem doing.
Well, the nice thing about the 8 1/4 is it's not likely to break in the middle of the worst possible time. The 7 1/4 will be awesome until it's not. It'll be a very off and on thing, right? So,
It's a light switch. It's like glass,
and then if you want to do an experiment with a certain gear, you can't, or there's no aftermarket for them. So
no. There was a time there where you could actually buy some gears for it, like 323s, 355s, and a 411. Now you can't even find 355 gears for it. It's literally 411. That's all you find. So, yeah, I'm kind of over it.
There's a lot of them out there, though. That's the good news.
Yeah, I've got like 3 of them on the side of the yard.
Right. I mean, if you pay more than $5 for one, you're probably getting burned. Those things are just everywhere.
Right. So you can consider the A33 seems pretty heavy duty, and Chrysler, and lots of issues. Yes. Okay. Here's the only issue with the A33 is third gear. This is where the top loader actually shines. Is that because the way third gear is inside the case under high load, which third is probably one of the highest loaded gears, because you're going from second to third before you get into 1 to 1.
Right.
But that's where it's going to break on the A33. Chrysler knew this. It just was what it was. Where the top loader, the third gear is closer. It's up against one of the edges, so it doesn't have as much flex in there. That's the only Achilles heel with the A33 is that. That's the only reason why I have a Ford top loader in San Diego still. It's been ringed and faced. In fact, it was one of old Freiberger's. When he got that Ford top loader, and he made a joke about full throttle shifts. I forget what it's that transmission. So
well, I can tell you, I got a picture here just for reference, because I know Andy and most folks in this chat probably know, but the top loader had a plate that was on the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your forks went in through the case. They didn't mount to the plate. And so I had a friend who was a guru of building these things, right? And he built a lot of them for a lot of applications. His car ran down in the low 8s with one with a factory case. Had some Liberty mods on the inside, but what he said is he liked the design because the forks don't flex.
That's right.
Or they're not on that plate. They're actually in the case. And he said that to him was the biggest reason he liked that design.
Yeah, and nothing slides together. It's one piece. It's literally like a tub, and everything goes inside that tub. So yes, I agree. It is superior design for that reason. So yes, and also too, there was just so many, because it's such a better transmission. There was so many more parts for it that were available, just cheaper. Oh, and I'm going to use a term that's going to really light up everybody. You're not paying the Mopar tax.
Yeah. Well, we're willing to pay whatever tax we have to, because Shane, to us, our Mopars are everything.
I agree. That's right. My Mopars always. I've got a tattoo of a Mopar symbol on my calf. I mean, come on. I'm a Mopar guy,
Aunt D, how do you feel about around 300 horsepower in front of an 833 overdrive? That should be fine.
Yeah, should be
300
fine.
horsepower. That's a realistic number.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're not asking us about 650 in front of one.
Yeah, and it's really going to be the torque. So if it's a V8, 300 horsepower is probably going to be about 400 foot-pounds of torque. It's going to be just fine, because they're not going to have any of that RPM. Who is that guy? I had a run-in with him today. Yeah. Right. T is a top loader too. I just had a shift rail going on the top cover. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I actually like that design. There's not as many modern things I like, but I do like that.
Oh, I think I passed one here. There was another one here, Shane. Shane, ever consider a 233 speed? No. I
Those are neat
really have,
transmissions.
huh?
I like those transmissions for drivers.
Yeah, for drivers, no. Um, I just haven't. I used to have a 3 on the tree. Um, and I'm trying to remember what train he was in it. It was I can't remember what it was.
Should be a 230
Probably a
in a
230. Yeah,
car. Yeah.
yeah, it was in a car, and
Was it a 230 in a car, a 250 in a truck? And then the 833 was the 4-speed. Am I remembering those numbers right?
could be. And that's why I was sitting here trying to think. Was it 230, 250? But yeah, it was 1, 2, and 3. I remember all that.
Where's
And then
Frank
down.
Parks when we need him? That would be right in his wheelhouse.
Right. Okay. Yeah. See, that'd be fine.
And Aunt D, yes, if you're doing a warmed up 318 or a 5.2 Magnum, that should be fine for you. If you're planning on twisting the guts out of it, then you're going to find the limits.
Yeah, exactly. And that'll be just fine. And you'll love it too, because all that torque that thing makes, you'll just be fine. And that was the whole thing too, is I wanted to go with that. I wanted to get, eventually everything of mine is going to go back to stick shift, because I had so much more fun when I would drag race with a stick shift. I'm eventually going to go back to that. So Cookie Monster might just always stay in automatic though, just because that way the wife can drive it if she wants to.
Well, I mean, just do realize there was nothing ever wrong with any of these 3-speed manuals. It's just that, 3-speed manual and you don't have a torque converter and there's a good spread between the gears. So as we generally like to make our cars quicker and throw more power to them than they were ever intended to have and drive them on the highway, we want all these things. We typically will go to a 4-speed or a 5-speed manual, or we'll do an automatic where we get a torque converter and overdrive. So the thing is by the time we actually feel what we really want to do with our cars, we're past what we could ever do with a 3-speed manual. But I wouldn't want people who are never driven one, never familiar with one, to think that they're weak or something. That's really not the problem. They're generally strong pieces. It's just they're more limited because of 3 wide ratio gears.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Rick Salmon, he says he's saying that 3 on the tree. That's exactly what I think. It was a 60 or 61 Dart.
Right on.
It was, and then it was a van that I was driving. And I just loved it because I always thought it was weird. Like I'm shifting gears on the on the column.
I have a friend that has a 3 on the tree and an F100 like Aunt D there has, and we put cab mounts in it. He said his cab mounts got so rotten he couldn't shift it anymore.
Oh, wow.
And it had nothing to do with anything except it was in a bind, or the rust on the cab mounts was so bad the cab was, So we measured it out and raised it up and put new cab mounts in it, and now it shifts like it's supposed to. So he's happy. He was thinking something was wrong with his transmission or his shifter or something, but it was not.
Yeah. Holland Transmission to the No Name National is going to be a tradition. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Might as well be. Let's see here. What do we got here? And D says, based on what you said about 3 on the tree, we're driving one of the wife's. Right.
Danny Boyd, you can tell he's driven them. He says 3-speeds have a better second gear and that awful jump to third. Yeah. That's part of it.
Ben, I want to grab some headers to keep engine bay cooler. Okay. On the carb, I wouldn't see any benefit on it, or the base plate. The best thing I've ever done on this for getting carburetors is I've just a piece of aluminum or steel that goes out that just redirects the heat. You can really see a difference in that. Now, I have on my road race car, I have ceramic coated my headers, and I'm going to wrap them so I can keep that engine bay cooler for reasons, because it's going to be a road race car. Drag racing car, really not a big deal, because you're really starting it up, going down the track, and that's that. And in that, I'm going to try to do what I can to keep the air stacking from underneath the hood, is where the air is coming in through the radiator and just nowhere for it to go. I'm going to be working on that for vents on the side.
So if you have the capacity to do the Cerakote, though, would it help with the fuel bowls, just to help keep the fuel cooler?
I mean, but you would be getting, because it's bolting up to the intake manifold. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? It's going to get the radiant heat from that anyway. So it's going to be, so I mean, the piece of aluminum that goes underneath there actually works better because the aluminum, you have a gasket, aluminum and a gasket, so that puts a little distance between it. Plus, it's not getting the indirect heat. So I don't know. I think that as much money as you would spend on it for, it's one of those time and money things is what it really would come down to.
Our friend Andy has sent me the Garlett's dragster video here.
Oh,
And
go
he says that the fun starts about 45 seconds. So this is perfect. I'll do my crazy zoom way. I'm about 5 seconds out. That's pretty wild.
That's so awesome.
How old is Don Garlits now? He's like, what, 90, 91, 2, somewhere in there?
That's so awesome. You know, when you first started up and started playing it, you could actually hear the nitro, and then it started clipping your microphone. The microphone naturally went, stop, hold up, time out. We're turning down the volume.
That's what it's for. I mean, you know, you don't listen to a nitro car because you want an easy listening experience.
Right, yeah. You know? Basically, okay, so I actually learned that SROD, top loader 4-speed, basically a 3-speed with a 4th overdrive. Okay, awesome.
Okay.
And that's news to me. 68 Coronet with a slide 6.3 on the tree, perfect Super B tribute, or just a fun daily driver. I'm telling you right now, yeah, that would be cool. Here's the thing, man. I have more fun with my drivers, my daily drivers, than I ever had with I shouldn't say ever. I've had more fun lately with the drivers than I've had with the race car. So I'm all about that. And it's really nice to get on the freeway, even though it's only for a couple exits, and really leg out the dart, because it will 75, 80, no problem, my green dart. And it really people kind of take a second look at it, because, you know, it's a 4-door dart.
Right.
It's not daily in the back of it. Just
that car is so cool. I like everything about that. You know? 4-door dart. I like the color, the whole thing. I'm down with that.
And I get more thumbs up and smiles than that thing, you know, all the time. Oh yes, yeah, the wood carved spacer. Yes, that works awesome too.
They work.
The only reason why I like that aluminum one is that I can spread it out farther. And it just basically is like a heat barrier at that point, just for the radiant heat, and it really does work. If you just get one of those cheap guns, temp guns from, was it Harbor Freight, you can really see it on that. You could just put it on and then go for a drive, put it on, and then take a temperature, and you'll see the difference. Take it back off. Oh, front engine, yes. And the only Gen 3 Hemi on nitro. Yeah. You know, I think that video is a little old too. Does it say when the date was on that? Because I remember that.
I can tell you when it was posted.
I remember that from a few years ago.
It was posted 6 years ago.
Yeah, that was about to say 5 or 6 years ago. That makes sense. Because
I hadn't seen that though. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a Jeffro. There's some inspiration,
I guess, for Two Hacks Jeff with his dragster. Two Hacks Jeff is building a front engine dragster.
Oh,
and he's going to run a small block Chevy on nitro.
No Name Nationals.
We'll see. Should be. But Jeff is. Let me tell you, Jeff sleeps about 2.5 hours a night. I'm not even exaggerating. And the way he is, he's got a good shot at it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But right now it's a pile of tubes and a chassis jig, and but he has a good plan, and his crew chief Jimmy there is going to help him get it together. He has experience in dragster chassis and running nitro. So
here's a little thing that I just thought of. 20, 10, 50, it doesn't say anywhere in the rules there has to be a car.
Has to have steel roof and quarters.
Oh, it does.
It'd be funny to see him take the steel roof and quarters and stick on that thing.
I was just gonna say, okay, so I didn't see that. Okay, so it's
he would like to get low ET, but we'll see what happens because I think low ET is going to be a fight this year. We'll see what happens.
Oh yeah.
But he is cooking on it. He's making progress. He's a go-getter.
Yeah, love that nitro. Really want to convert a nitro for a track day. Afraid it will burn down. Tried to get UTG to explain saw safety, but my wife mentioned, "Are you going to trust him?" Okay. Here's the thing about nitro. I've actually have a lot of experience in nitromethane, but it was in Honda engines, believe it or not. I worked with a guy named TB at TB Motorworks. He set a record for the VTEC, the 16B. He went a 8-second with a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder Honda in at the Maryland when they do the World Finals. You know where they do that? Okay, so it was a nitromethane engine, and you have to make the camshaft. We must have went through about 10 different camshafts for the exhaust for that. And here's the thing about nitromethane. Once you start getting over 40% is what I'm going to say. Once you get over between 20 and 40% is really when you're like, there's a tipping point where like, oh yes, that's nitro now. Really, once you get over 50%, that's when you start having all the issues of how dry it runs, how slow it burns, how long it burns, where we have to start cranking that ignition timing up. I'm just everything, and then it just gets exponentially worth the more nitro you put into it. So
I love the deal how they can actually have a detonation all the way to the bottom.
Yes,
I mean, it's a whole different world with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I told you about the we're at the March meet. No, it was a hot rod reunion at Fontana. Not Fontana. It was at Bakersfield, Famoso. I was standing in the back, and I watched him. I was standing right behind. I can't remember the name of the car, but he left, and he got out about 100 foot, and I watched the distributor cap fly up in the air. Now this is a magneto, but he's already on the pipe at this point, and that thing continued down the drag strip, and that magneto cap had popped up like this and was kind of doing this number, because by that point it was just detonating all the way down the track. So, and I had no idea that was happening. Now remember, these are only single mags. These are not the guys putting in those this much fuel per revolution. Let's put it
right.
But it literally hydraulicked all the way down that track. So and ran. So if I didn't see it, I wouldn't have believed it.
Well, I can't get over the volume of fuel that they burn with their air fuel ratio. That just is wild to me.
Yes, everybody's been to the Hot Rod Museum where you push the button. You've seen that, or that video. Have you seen that?
I haven't. I know what the ratio is, though. It's pretty astronomical, but I've not seen that display.
Yes, you should Google it sometime after this on YouTube, and it's a fuel pump for a top fuel dragster. And when it first starts up, you're like, wow, whatever, right? And then you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of fuel, and then that's just the burnout.
Right.
And then they crank it up, and you're like, whoa.
Well, you can hear them, when they're staging. After they pre-stage, they hit the other side and bring up the volume of fuel, and the RPMs pull down.
Yeah, it goes.
Ooh, it's creepy.
Yeah. It's time. Yeah. When I went to the guy's house to see the fixture to drill a Magnum block for LA, I bought a 360 Magnum block right, $20. Exactly. You're exactly right. Yes. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, because you're drilling it about this far.
Right.
And if you see where it has to hump through in that little tiny pocket, and you're like, if I miss this at all, I'm done. And you have about this much to hit on the cam. You're exactly right. By that point, you just go by, a late 80s, early 90s, right before the Magnum, block, right when they had the twin blocks. You just get one of those. Yes, $20. Way ahead of the game.
Man, that make me nervous drilling something as deep as you got to do with that to make that work.
Yes. Yeah. I've done it, and there was a fixture for it, and there's a thing, and that drill bit is you start with a small one and you work your way up, but by the time you're just going, man, and it's cast iron too, and you're like, and that's old cast iron, so it's nice and hard, and it's been tempered and heat treated. And,
a lot of nickel in it.
Yeah.
You feel like a well driller, you know, are you going to break the bit off before you get to the water table?
Straight up question: is it a crazy idea to mix less 40% or some safe percent nitro for track day, or is it crazy risk requiring new engine? Okay, you can you're not really going to see a benefit, and that's what I was saying. The tipping point is that you will go a little faster. If you really want to see how much nitromethane actually makes, I think Cletus is his name. What's up? The guy is it Cletus? What's his YouTube channel? Freedom Factory guy. What's his name?
Oh yeah, Cletus McFarland has a Freedom Factory.
Yeah, okay, so what's his YouTube channel called? Cletus
McFarland.
Oh, it is? Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, so that's his YouTube. Okay, go to his YouTube channel, and they take a stock 5.3 and they run it on nitromethane on the dyno, and they will show you the different percentages and what they'll do, and how you have to time for it. And 40% is right at that number where you're going to start seeing really big power gains and having to really be careful, because you detonate, like John just mentioned it will detonate to the bottom. It's not just a bang at the very top and then it's just kind of going through its expansion cycle. No, it's going all the way to the bottom. The exhaust valve opens and it's still exploding out the pipe. That's why you see the flames. That's still explosion happening. So
with gasoline, how many degrees are you actually off top dead center before the party's completely over with gasoline?
It's before
20 or 30.
Yeah,
it's not much. And then believe it or not, with more compression, it's actually sooner, because the more compression you have, the faster it decays.
Yes, exactly.
And then when you run this nitromethane, I mean, it's nothing like that. It's all
yeah. So it's
So that's what I guess you were talking about when you're saying trying to grind cams to get the exhaust right. Is you got to realize this stuff burns so long. I mean, it's like it's interfering with the stroke cycles.
Yes, and going back into the intake manifold.
Yeah, that's a real thing with them.
Yes, exactly. And then you got to hang that thing open. So like, okay, here's case in point. We had, now remember, this is on a Honda B series, right? VTEC. We had 280 degrees of duration at 50 timing on the cam. We had 310 on the exhaust duration at 50. Think about that. That's a lot.
That's enormous.
That's enormous, right? Now I can't tell you. Now there were some tricks there. I'm not going to tell you about overlap or where we set the intake center lines because that's proprietary.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you that's an enormous amount. Yeah, an enormous amount, especially on a Honda.
That's almost half the base circle.
Yeah,
it's close to it.
Yeah, it literally would run. It would idle at about 1,500 to 2,000 RPMs. Where it would idle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Michael Schmidt, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Yes, it was. It was awesome. I do miss that. And I think he set the record in 19. And then we were going to go back in 20, or was it 18 we did in 19? I can't remember what year it was, but he was going to do back-to-back, runs. And so I was still at Crowder at the time. So we decided to do a K series. And he was going to go back, but then the whole COVID thing happened, and he never made it back. But he did set the very first one into the 9s with the V6, the J series. I helped him with that one. And then he also did the B series and then the K series. So I've got a pretty good working relationship with the Hondas.
Thank you, Michael Schmidt. Appreciate that.
Very much so.
Patrick says that fixture to drill that oil galley was made by a machinist at the Kokomo plant that did transmissions for Chrysler. I think that's cool.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Wow.
where all torque flights came from.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be all that crazy if you think about it, because it just really is whatever angle it is to the deck height. You get a sleeve in it, and as long as you start it correctly, you know, and I've done it. Yeah, but we did it in a Bridgeport. We didn't have like a fixture,
Oh, I would feel comfortable probably doing that over the fixture anyway.
Yeah. And in fact, I did it in a Bridgeport whenever I used to do the copper tubing into the LAs. Getting a 1/2-inch drill to start down through the lifter galley was always wants to cock and jump around.
You think about a drill bit this long, I'd have to do the math on it, but 2000s here can translate into bursting outside casting at the top.
Oh yeah,
deep in something. So, and the bit will bend over that kind of length too.
Oh, it will curve.
Oh
absolutely. Yeah, and that's the reason why they drilled from 2 directions on the block. And if you look down the block with the bore scope, you'll see that they don't line up, and they really don't. So they come close. So that's why whenever I get one of these, I will, especially in LA, I will run a drill bit that's a long drill bit down through there just to clean up the flash, because sometimes it drills this way, and this is the main oil galley that they kind of come together at, and there's half flashing there covering that oil galley getting up to the front mains. I've seen that. So can chain copper grind cams? Absolutely. In fact, yes, we can. Or I'm going to be doing that for one of our viewers here pretty soon. So yes, absolutely, we sure can.
Dust Devil says it's not something he would want to do with a cordless DeWalt. No, it is not.
No, not at all.
Had a starter hole in a different bush. Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure the fixture has that. But even with that, realize a couple thousandths at your fixture can be a whole lot different once you go several inches into that block's casting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you could, with enough, if you tell me the length and 2 degrees or whatever it is, 2 thousandths off that you're starting with, I can just do the hypotenuse. So you basically sign a cosine that for you.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Tell you how far it's off. And that's the big thing. That's what I was saying. You have to hit this much space, and I think it was 8 inches to get onto that bearing for the cam. Because remember that bearing only has one little hole in it. So if you don't hit it, it's only going to be half covered. So
think of it like shooting long range, a minute of angle. That the drill bit does something similar at that kind of distance.
Yeah, man, it's already been an hour and a half.
I know, it's clipping along. It's been fun.
Man, it's been a good one. Oh, right here. I also posted the top fuel consumption video on the Facebook No Name Nationals group.
Oh, cool.
I'll send it to John also.
Thanks, Scott.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you, man. Yeah, because that's an awesome video. I've actually seen that in person. That was at the NHRA museum up there in Pomona, and you go in there and you kept hearing this whining noise. You're walking around, and every man had to push that button just to, just to see it.
So was it as irresistible as the little crank with the gears to compare the 2 kinds of oil?
100%.
You have to do. Remember when those things were in parts stores? You had to do that.
We still have one at our. And my little boy walks right over to it, grabs it, and I look at him and I give it as fast as he can go, just to see it. And I told him, I was like, Cash, there was one time where I was a parts jockey and those were brand new. We got some of them that were broken, and we wanted to see how fast we could spin it. So we cut it, we put a drill on the end of it, we spun it up, and we did everything to see how fast we could make it go to where we actually melted the plastic, So we've all been there.
Oh yeah.
We did it with a cordless Craftsman drill. Of course, it's a compound angle. Right? Well,
that's okay. How much room do you have?
Yeah, it just is what it is.
If it works, it works.
Yeah. I just did it on car bodies, bowls, vacuum point because it looks nasty and wanted to be finished. Okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Hey, this is America. That's a perfectly good reason to do it.
Absolutely. You know what my biggest saying is? I did it because I can.
Yes.
That's why I
Yep.
can. You can't, but I can. That's
Mhm.
why I did it. Okay. Oh, right there, John. Don't forget windage.
I didn't, and you know what? One of these days we will have a live stream on a different topic, and we can get into ballistics because there's a lot of fun stuff. And Professor P might be into that. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not car stuff, but it is really heavy duty science stuff,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. It's
Hmm.
interesting, and some of that math and knowledge you use does kind of apply. Some of it does. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised.
It's mass and force is a real. In fact, a lot of our engineering questions and physics questions were about bullets trajectory
Yeah.
and velocity because you're dealing with a parabolic of what angle, what gravitational pull. I mean, all that stuff you have to factor all that in. You know. Um,
I just know that you can compare both the maximum ordnance of a bullet and you can compare the maximum ordnance of a connecting rod trying to get the worst oil down at no name mash tools. Either one of them will have that same calculation, I'd imagine.
that's right. It's all about force and mass and how fast it's
That's
changing
right.
direction. Yeah. Would it be possible to have you custom grind a cam for? Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Now once again, I'm just in engineering. I'm just an engineer there. I don't do anything with sales or anything like that. But for you guys here, I do help you guys out. There's a few people here that I help out. So I do have other responsibilities. So just know that I am not a salesman. So I'm a little slower on things because I can do it when I can do it. As long as you're cool with that, it's spolito@edelbrock.com. Send me the whole information on the project, what you intend to do with it. If you've got cylinder head flow numbers, that's good. If not, just tell me the make, who messed with them, and I can usually get pretty close on those, and then we can kind of go from there.
Uh,
Um,
Scott from Heavens Mopars sent a link to that fuel pump video. I'm going to ask Colleen to post it in the chat for folks who want to save it for after the live and see it.
okay. Oh, and Andy's on his way out. Have a good night, Andy. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for coming by.
And okay, MSD. Oh yes, push the button igniter buzzer. Remember that one when they had the MSD up on the counter?
I vaguely remember that. I
Yeah,
vaguely
yeah.
remember that.
So Miss Katie's saying I got a single pattern solid roller for the Cleveland. You guessed it, 244 I-50. Never increased exhaust duration, so intake needs lobe reduced to 237. Okay, you can actually mess with this a little bit by changing rocker arm ratios if you have the ability to. So you can go a little shorter on the intake, go a little longer on the exhaust. Say if you don't, then we can just cut that down. I personally, the only reason I'd ever run a straight pattern is if you have over 80% between intake and exhaust as far as CFM. If your most engines are going to be in the 70 range, so that's why I always try to give about 4 degrees on that, sometimes 6, just to be a little happy. But see, the person who would know more about this on Fords is on the Clevelands is Mr. Dallas Brown, who knows a lot about the Clevelands. I'll do a little checking into that, and if you you can email me at slatdailygarage@yahoo or spolito@edelbrock.com.
There,
And
there.
then
So 3 people in our community actually would be really good to ask about this. Dallas, Andy Wood, he knows a
okay,
lot about the Cleveland, and Tim over at Drag Boss Garage.
yeah,
He's a Cleveland guy.
okay, yeah. So I mean, if they have really good, I remember they have really good head flow. I know
Mhm.
that. I just don't know what they have on the exhaust. So I do
But the
know the
concept of it, because a
yeah,
Cleveland is its own animal.
yes, it is 100%, absolutely
The cannon valve thing with the Cleveland changes everything. So if you tell
everything.
those numbers to somebody with a wedge head, they might
Mm-mm.
they might run you astray. So you have to make sure to ask somebody that's familiar with that kind of
Yeah,
engine.
you got to think big block Chevrolet or in the realm of Gen 2 style Hemi with the cannon
Yeah,
valves because that's how it works.
right.
So anytime you get the valve away from the actual bore, they actually work better, and it helps with scavenging. That's why sometimes you can run a little less scavenging, and it works better because they'll self scavenge themselves because the valves are literally pointing at each other.
I love the Cleveland. I think the Cleveland is what the 318 Poly should have been.
Yes, That is absolutely correct. That has always been
If they'd gone that way with the 318 poly, we would never have even won a DLA engine.
right. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Oh yeah. So here's is that it right there?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the fuel pump video.
That'll show folks the volume of those things. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing, actually.
Did you watch it?
I haven't watched it yet, but I've seen the volume. I mean, I've seen others where they put the volume. Looks like they're trying to fill a swimming pool.
right. Right. Ripper FE. Okay, so Ripper FE. Thanks. Yes. She's saying bad exhaust flow. See, once again, I don't know. So if that's the case, then we'd want to split that a little bit more. But 240, 244 duration, both intake and exhaust is
So every make has its own tax, and if you're going to run a Ford, you're going to have to deal with exhaust that flows this way because it was all designed to put the chassis with shock towers.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's just something you got to deal with. There are crutches you can do. Some of them might be more exotic than what you want to do, but there's ways to crutch for that. And I mean, I had a friend that ran Fords, and he would take practically, you wouldn't believe how much he would mill off the side of the head and then put into a port plate to try to correct that. And ran a lot of compression because, again, the more compression you have, the faster it decays. So there's a lot of things that you got to deal with. However, if you can get around having to pay that Ford tax to run one, they're wonderful engines and make a ton of power.
Yeah, absolutely. MD asked, would they be able to make a roller cam for a 300 Ford? I don't know because where is the gear on the 300 Ford for the distributor? Is it in the center? If it is,
I can't remember offhand. I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is. See, that's the problem with these is that because you got to run, if the gear's in the center to make a billet core, you're going to have to cut that gear. That's where it becomes astronomically expensive. A lot of these guys that were making some of these roller grinds for the Slant 6, we're taking that gear right off there. And they're literally running a crank trigger and they're running a dry sump system. So there's no oil pump on it. And they're just pumping into the side. If you can get away with that, then I don't see a problem with it. There's got to be someone making those.
But now, also on the other hand, you can do some pretty amazing things with regrinds, and
yes.
It all you have to calculate how much room you have to work with. It's going to be based on a few things. Obviously, LSA can be changed a little bit, but not too radically, and also the heat treatment. You've only got so much heat treatment you can work with, so you need a really super competent engineer like the one on the left side of the screen to figure out such things, to know what you could do with one.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, is that to make a cast iron cam into a roller, that was a flat top, is rather hard because where the point is on the roller, you have to add so much material to it. So if you're doing a regrind,
to do it in a roller, that would be
to do the roller. So for something like a 300 Ford, I mean, I would just stay with the flat tappet. I mean, everyone's scared of them nowadays, but
that's one that makes sense.
Yeah, it just makes sense. And you could buy 10 or 12 camshafts for the amount of money you're going to put into making that roller. I promise you that.
If you were doing that, think about how much you'd have to crutch that with your rocker arms to try to work with that lobe shape. Yeah, I was just thinking staying the same, but you're right.
Shane, do you think you have a desktop? Literally, I believe it's free nowadays. Just type in desktop dyno software and you can just download a link.
It's got to be by now.
Yeah, it's free because I have it on this computer here and I got it for free.
Yeah.
And it was, it's once again, this is not the be all end all. This shows you trends. The only thing that I've noticed that it doesn't do correctly is when you get there gets a point where you get too much overlap window, it still shows good. So there are some things in there but it does show you the correct trends on some areas. So
I'm digging that question of Patrick's there.
Let's see. Come on down. Oh, right here.
Yeah. Doesn't a smaller LSA raise cranking compression?
Smaller lobe separation. So when he's talking about, like, say, a 106, or is that what he's asking?
Well, I think he's wanting to compare and contrast when you change that overlap, what it does to your cranking compression.
Yeah. So if a 106 is going to have a higher cranking compression, everything being equal, 106 will have a higher cranking compression, and a 112 will have a lower cranking compression. In fact, that's exactly how you get away with, if you have, let's say, like a 12-to-1 engine that you want to drive on the street with pump gas, you just spread it out. But the problem is when you start to RPM it, because that's when the compression really wants to take an effect, and that's when you got problems with that. But yes, it does, absolutely.
Well, but the question I want to have is what's the deal with the cranking compression anyway? I mean, what I'm saying is that the most important virtue? I would put having a cam that functions with the right LSA over what the cranking compression is any day.
Yeah, exactly. I only use cranking compression as a measurement, and what I do with that is that I will do cranking compression when I build a brand new engine, say like right after I break it in, and then I use it just as a metric, and then I will do a cranking compression, like, say, after 500 miles, and typically it goes up. So usually an engine will have, like, say, 170, right when it's, this is like a hopped up street engine. Like, okay, on my recipes that I have, right, they'll start at about 165, 170, and then you'll see them slowly tick up to about 190, where they stay right about 190, 195. And for that, it's because it's the ring seating. So what I do with the crank compression is I use it as just a metric. So I know, and it's a quick way without doing a leak down to where I see what the engine is telling me underneath as far as ring seat. That's all I really use it for.
Miss Katie's talking about breaking in. It goes with Brian's question you have pulled up there, but talking about running weaker springs break in. So when you break a cam in, your springs, and Brian's talking about DLC lifters, but I think it's a good reminder about doing a cam break in, the things that increase your odds of success.
Yes, and run the lightest springs possible. Literally run it in half, because you're only really keeping the RPM, and make it start right away. That's the biggest thing. You want the thing to start right away. Excessive cranking on it's just going to wipe all that crap right off the lobes and heat it up. Let's see here. Where was I? Oh yeah, Dust Devil. This one.
Yeah, right, and he's talking about the DLC coating.
Yeah, right. I can tell you, this year sometime. How about that?
Awesome.
Okay. Now, obviously things happen, whatever. I can tell you that beyond that, that's all I can tell you is this year sometime.
There is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming train.
Yes, and I'm going to get some, and I'm going to throw them in my Slant 6, and I will do everything wrong in planet Earth to break that thing. And I'll do it right there.
It'll look like a Prolong or a Duralube commercial or something.
Here's the oil pan off. You know what I mean? Here's sand that I'm putting into the engine. Remember, though, it still runs. Hey. Here's the fire hose.
Well, now, Aunt Dee says cranking compression's a huge deal when you have to hand start. Well, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, right.
There's always that guy, right?
Yeah. I could get really into all that with a cranking compression, but really, there's really, it really does. For me, I use it just as a metric. That's it. That's all it really needs to be.
No, I'm kidding, but I do like that. It's like, I will say there's always that guy who has the Model T Ford, but in this community, we really do have a guy who's a 1916 Model T Ford. So
right. Yeah. Flat tappers with low tension springs seems to be reliable. I think a higher spring rates and import springs were problems with flat tappers. It's really honestly, I think the biggest issue is me being in the industry is the ramp rates were literally 3 times as fast as they've ever been. And that is really, and you have a population of people that have not been around that, so they know how to break them in, starting instantly, low spring pressures. Obviously, it's just, there's so many things that add up to a big problem. Okay. Everyone wants to blame it on taper. Everyone wants to blame it on this. Well, you're the engine builder. These are aftermarket parts. You got to check for crown. You don't check for crown after it fails. You check for crown before you put it in. You check for taper on the lobe. You want a good break-in oil. You want low tension springs. You want the thing to fire. There's a lot of different things.
Well, I'll throw
So
something out there. You know how in the 70s and 80s, the GM cams were notorious for being a little bit soft?
yes,
And like some of them were in the 40s, of hardness?
yeah,
Well, think about it. Even if that cam went bad at 70 or 80,000 miles, and people said, oh man, bad metallurgy, it still made it through the break in and all those miles.
hmm
So to say that the soft metal that might be in a Chinese lifter is the problem really isn't, because look at all those break ins that happened on those.
yes.
So,
And what it is you're exactly right. And what it is because you made a ramp rate that is exponentially 3 times faster.
yeah.
You're putting that much more force, and it's a cube thing. It's not just like the force is so much. It's fast. It
A
goes up quick.
solid lifter can do something a roller lifter can't do because of the lifter shape. It's inherent that you can have that fast rate. And now you've got guys in class racing really exploring those edges. Of course, you're going to see more kabooms.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole thing too. And pound for pound, if I was given the option, I would pick a flat tappet lifter over roller any day of the week. Lighter lifter, lighter valve train. You can. There's so much for what you're doing now. For my type of racing, now obviously there is a time and a place for everything. But if I'm driving it on the street and I'm racing it around and I'm driving wherever I want, I'm gonna flat tap it, man, because it's cheap. I can have 10 of them just on the shelf waiting. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay, I finally got to it. For some reason, my chat just updated, so I'm sorry I'm behind, guys. Heading out to fellows peoples, John for speed and all others. Don waits for no one. On the flip side, Ron days. All right, Ron, thank you for stopping by. Thanks for
Have a good evening, Ron.
Have a good evening.
Thanks for being here.
Flatten the cam. I had on a fresh 340 industrial wiper load in 10 minutes. Stock replacement cam, and it broke right in. Exactly, stock replacement cam. It's because ramp rates. There's
Michael Schmidt, though, he mentions this, and he's not wrong. Hardness, improper convex lifter. Oh yeah, there's several things that can contribute to this perfect storm of problems. No doubt.
Absolutely.
There's a great video on the lifter face. A few of them were done. Daniel Powell Machine really does a good job showing the convex on the lifters, and he has a really good video on that. Go check it out. But this is not an either or thing, right? You really need to get all of the stuff right to successfully run a flat tappet lifter.
Yes. Now, I'm telling you yes because I've been there. If you order the DLCs from Comp, everybody at Comp, all the salesmen know exactly what camshafts will work with it. So yes, absolutely. And it is you want aggressive. It needs to be aggressive. It needs to be loaded. It's one of those deals. So the whole idea too is that you don't want it to run off the edge because it is a coating and there's a slight chamfer on the edge of the lifter. This is the top of your lifter. Let's imagine this is the flat where it hits the cam. On a regular lifter, you can basically run it right out to the edge, but because we have to put a coating on it, the coating's got to come here. There has to be chamfer. You don't want a hard edge. So that makes the footprint slightly smaller. But because of that, you can make the ramp rates faster. You compensate because it's just area under the curve. So there is a slight thing. So let's just say your footprint on an 842 lifter, the lifter literally is an 841. That means that you can run, like say, a 780 footprint as far as what is usable on it. So now you can, and these are just numbers I'm throwing out there because I don't know, but I'm just giving you examples. These are just examples. So 780 is your footprint. That means that if on a regular lifter, you can run a 780 type of foot as far as how fast the load's coming in. Now you can only run a 770, but because it's DLC, you can run that much more ramp rate on it once it starts to open up because you can get more aggressive with it because you can load it a lot harder. So you're just robbing Paul to pay Peter, essentially, but you're getting a much more superior lifter that literally, once you buy them, You own them, and that's that. You can put different camshafts under them. And here's the greatest thing of all. I've said this many times, but now that we're talking about it, is that you don't have to run a cast iron core. You can run a billet core with DLC lifters. So that's NASCAR technology. That's what they were doing until they went to the rollers. So you can have all your custom cores, whatever you want. You can have custom cams made. What's awesome about this is that you can have that Mr. Dallas Brown. Remember how we made that custom cam for him for the What If 300?
Mm-hmm.
Now we can make that in billet and put the DLC coded lifters right on it, and not ever have to worry about it. That's the beautiful thing about it.
So there's two things that come to mind when you say this. Makes the footprint smaller. One, you're giving up a dime and you're getting $1. And two, have you ever heard anybody in the history of ever say, "Oh man, I'd run a supercharger, but it weighs too much"? Sometimes what you're giving up is just a no-brainer worth it.
Yeah, there's no free lunch in physics. You've got to take something to give something.
You just want to make good trades.
Yes, and this is a good trade. I promise you that.
It's a good trade.
Yeah, very much so. Oh yeah, so people are going through. Okay, so it was a stock cam. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I'm sorry, trying to jump through all these chats, so I apologize. So, yeah, that does suck. Oh, and 305s. Chevrolets in general were known for eating cam lobes because they would cut the cam straight down, the actual hole. And what I would do is I would look for 350s. I was going to rebuild this. I'd look at the back, and where the plug would plug into the back, there's a pad. And depending on how that hole came out, I could look at the back and look at the camshaft afterwards and knew that it wiped out number 5 and 7, or if it wiped out 8 and 6 by how far that was off. So,
wow.
Yeah, you can really do it. Now, Chrysler was much better. Their machining process on the cams was much better than the 350.
Just in the core shift.
Just in the core shift. I think it's actually it's not just the core shift. I think it was the drill, the machining process of actually cutting for the bearings. But you just look at the back of a few 350s and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
They'll be shifted.
I love getting to do this just because I get to learn new things. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. Without being brand specific, what are your feelings about putting different brand engines into vintage muscle cars? I'm all about it, man. And if you do it, own it. That's the only thing I say. Look, I'm a Mopar guy through and through, but I will be the first one to tell you right now that if I came across a K-Series engine or a really good 3-rotor rotary, it would go in my dog.
Dude, I had that idea years ago. I said it would be so cool to do a 79 cubic inch rotary in an A-body. And the person I told that to shot it down as the worst idea in the history of ever. And I'm like, man, but it sounds so cool.
Dude,
I would love to do that.
It would be everything I wanted. It would be bridge corded. I would have 2-stroke oil running into it, so it smelled like a 2-stroke. I'd run the Maxima 927 oil in it. Remember the bean oil? So it has that smell from like late 80s, early 90s. I would own it. If you're going to do it, just own it. That's it. That's all I have to say. And yes, if you can do it, because I can. That's why I did it. That's why.
Yeah.
And you know what I would run for a transmission? A 904.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's what I would do, because a rotary engine.
Because you can make that work.
Yes, I can make it work. I think the break-in oil is a major issue. Oil has changed in the last few years, and a lot of people don't know Rotella doesn't have the same zinc content it did 5 years ago. I always use now where I'm at now. I use the Driven, because Driven is literally across the parking lot from Comp Camp. So I get all the Driven break-in oil. But before that, I used to use the Valvoline when you could get the 2050 Valvoline racing version. It was the high zinc. Now, you are correct. Rotella doesn't have the same zinc content, but it's still up there. I still believe it's 1200 ppm, parts per million. But it's also the phosphorus, it's the magnesium, it's all the stuff that it's been come down. It's the whole package of things. And here's a few things that I learned recently, is that just adding zinc to it is not enough, because the detergents in the Rotella will actually attack the additives in there unless you mix it right away. So there's the many different things in there. So if you just let it sit in a bottle and not mix it, or like in an engine, it could attack it and actually make it worse than what it was before you made it. So yeah, there's a lot of different things going on there. So I would say just here's the thing: buy the most expensive break-in oil. I personally like the Driven. In fact, all the engine dynos that we have at our R&D, everything is done on break-in on Driven, and we have not failed a flat tap lifter. Even before our DLC coatings lifters were there, we were trying to fail them just to see, and we weren't getting any failures with that Driven break-in oil. And this is not, I'm not getting paid by them. I'm just telling you what works. So, and I don't get anything for free from them. I'll tell you that. What's he saying here?
Oh. Yeah, Shane's brain's got a lot of math going on. Hey, by the way, if you want to know more, again, there's no sponsorship money, nothing to do with that. But if you want to learn more about oil in general, I had a Lake Speed Jr. on a live stream here within the last year, and go back and watch that because we really get into the weeds when it comes to lubricant technology, what your engine oil is, and that kind of thing. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And that guy is really, really good on this. He was on the last talk I watched at, what was that? At PRI. They were talking about that. He's amazing, man. I'm trying to remember his name. What does he have? He calls it not a mixologist, but he's
what is that term? Oh, I don't know why it's escaping me. Yeah, I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah.
But he's also brand agnostic, as he says. So rather than describe things in properties that one brand or another makes, he forces you to do an objective comparison, which I think is really great. The smart guy, you'll get a lot out of it.
Yeah. Okay. There was cool engines in some brands.
Tribologist.
Is that what it is?
I believe that's it. Tribologist.
And he's certified in that. He's got a diploma and all that stuff.
He's legit. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Legit. Yeah. There's some cool engines brands out there, Wilder support, and those brand engines. I think back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, there was no support. So we'll go out there and get a brand. Yes, I'm telling you, man, just go out there and have some fun on it. I think because I've driven a lot of rotaries, I think a rotary and an A body with a 904 and a 276 gear in it with a 277, you would in a lockup converter would be ideal because that engine wants to be at 2,700 RPM going down the freeway. And it would sound so cool, man. Imagine that doing 80 miles an hour passing fools, in a 4-door Dart, and that thing's and that would be awesome. All right, back on track. We flattened out a ton of 454 cams. I'm sure it had nothing to do with improper break-in. The only reason we didn't have more of his really wild cams and really tight valve springs. Yeah. Also, too, once again, I'm not talking bad. I'm just saying this is for a fact. Chevrolets were notorious for this because of some of their cam grinding, how they were cutting some of the cores for the camshafts, for the bearings. And it just happens. So. Okay, Michael Schmidt.
Yes.
Go ahead and grab this one.
He says he hates this question, but what oil is suggested for flat tappets these days, asking to reduce research hours, anything new on this topic? All I can say is you probably want to run something with zinc. And, like Brian said, the Rotella doesn't have what it used to. The R1 Valvoline Racing has a lot of zinc in it. But there does come a point that you get to diminishing returns with the amount of zinc. It's not more is always better.
That's correct.
So those are just some thoughts about it, but.
If you want my opinion on this, and this is just my opinion, I'm definitely not Mr. Lake Speed when it comes to this, but I've seen a lot of testing on oils and over-the-counter oils. The Valvoline 2050 Racing has got a decent oil package and a lubrication package in it, and everybody can get it at over-the-counter. So for me, that's worth something. Whenever I build something, I want to know where can I get the parts if I break it. If I'm doing oil, do I want to wait for oil to come? I can get this oil. So when I built my engine for the Cookie Monster, when I built the Slant 6, it all was designed around 2050 style of oil for that reason. So all my cam bearings are designed for that type um, of gap. Man, we're already. It's
I got a funny one for you. So this was a couple years ago. I went to the dyno session with Andy when he dyno mixed up Boss. I don't know if Andy's still in here or not, but he'll remember this. We went in some parts store somewhere down there, and he was getting some exotic oil, and I'm like, how did they just happen to have that in stock? Like they stock that for me. He gets enough of it that it's like a stock item for the store.
Yeah.
So unless you do that,
it's Valvoline 2050 Racing, I think is what it's in a black container, and they sell it in quarts, and they also have it in a gallon container.
Yep. That's a good oil.
It's a good oil. It's a really good oil. Just don't leave it outside and let it get really cold because it gets really thick. So it's 9 o'clock, guys, and it went by really fast, really fast. Is there anything you want to plug, Mr.?
It flew by this evening.
Yeah.
No, nothing specific. I've got some good guests coming up on some live streams here in the very near future. People you recognize, some you will not, but it's just fun stuff coming up there. But that's just in general.
Yeah. For me, not really much. I'm going to be basically just in the garage, and we'll see what video comes up about it. I might do something about how I made that thing because a lot of people are asking, but literally it's an edger with an engine and an alternator from a Cadillac that makes it's a 120 amp alternator. You can get it at any parts store. So
yeah, cool.
So anyways, it's been awesome. And thanks again. And once again, John, thank you for coming in here, filling in.
It's a blast. I love it. I love getting to hang out with you guys. I get to learn new stuff with you. This is just great.
Yeah. But until next week, don't forget, go see Mr. John Wilburn on Friday night at 7 p.m. Central Time.
7 Central, 8 Eastern. We'll be live on Friday, and we'll have a great time.
All right, guys. Take it easy. See you later. And have a good